So this week I would like you to research more on US-Iranian relations. Now, the most important feature of US-Iranian relations for the last 15 years really has been the nuclear program of Iran. Here, within the framework of non-proliferation, the US and European allies, plus Russia and China, so all of the permanent members of the UN Security Council, plus Germany, wanted to Iran give up enrichment of uranium. Now again, what is non-proliferation? Non-proliferation, nuclear non-proliferation means that you have one very exclusive club of nuclear power states, and you have another even more exclusive club of nuclear weapon states. And that very, very exclusive club of nuclear weapon states don't want any additional trigger on the nuclear weapon button. So non-proliferation means we don't want any more countries to procure nuclear weapons and be added to that exclusive club. Now, part of the most important effort is the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Non-Proliferation Treaty, if you join as a country to that Non-Proliferation Treaty, you declare yourself, you want only nuclear energy for civilian, peaceful purposes, and you commit yourself not to ever want to have a nuclear weapon or do anything to that effort in a clandestine fashion. So looking at countries like Japan, Germany, these are nuclear power states, nuclear states. They have nuclear energy. Use it for nuclear energy, use it for medical research, medical treatment, but you do not, and you commit yourself to never ever to build a nuclear weapon. Now, if you're looking at the nature of US-Iran relations, it really goes beyond just the nuclear program. We really have to probe a bit deeper, looking at the essence of US-Iran relations. And we can really look at two time frames and two ways of how we frame that relationship. And it becomes very different depending on how you frame it. If you frame US-Iran relations from 1979 onwards, then clearly Iran is the villain. Iran broke relations by attacking the US embassy, taking diplomats hostage for 1.5 years after the Iranian Islamic Revolution of 1979. So clearly Iran here is the villain. Now, Iranians on the other side, the Iranian government certainly prefers to frame relations between the US and Iran from 1953, in which case MI6 and CIA instigated a coup d'etat against the democratically Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, who had nationalized Iranian oil, and he was running on a very nationalist, pro-independence platform, which Western powers, in particular Britain, didn't like. So CIA and MI6 went in, overthrew the Prime Minister, and what subsequently followed was a very, very authoritarian monarchy all the way till 1979. If you frame that conflict within that framework, of course, clearly the United States, and to a lesser extent the Brits, are the villains. Now, part of that exercise this week is for you to look at how have we approached, if you're a US policymaker or if you were Iranian policymaker, how have they approached relations with the other country? What sort of mindset would you identify as the most convincing and most plausible informing decision-making, either in the United States or in Iran? Now, again, if you look at the reading, I've written 2 books on Iran and on the nuclear program, so I want to give you some more information in that reading, put them as a PDF on week 6 in Canvas, and some additional reading on US-Iran relations after the nuclear deal. Now, the big timeline really is, we're looking at the invasion of Iraq happened in 2003. It was after that a lot more pressure was put on the Iranians to come clean with their nuclear program. The Europeans had really allied themselves with the US on that one, so there was a big difference in how they approached Iraq. Particularly Germany and France didn't want anything to do with it, were opposed to the invasion of Iraq in 2003. The Brits certainly were on side with the Bush administration at that time. But on Iran, they were all singing from the same hymn. that they were largely concerned with nuclear non-proliferation. They wanted Iran to come clean with the nuclear weapons program. 2005, the Iranians were not complying enough. The EU and the Americans then referred Iran to the UN Security Council, and then the UN Security Council issued a series of resolutions with authorized sanctions against Iran, multilateral UN sanctions. Now, prior, Iran always had and still has US unilateral sanctions, but for the first time, the UN actually authorized sanctions against Iran. In addition, the EU also imposed sanctions. And that really hit Iran where it hurts the most, and that's, of course, the exports of oil. If you're looking at a hydrocarbon-reliant country like Iran, if you target the oil sector, that's a huge amount of the GDP, has a huge impact on the economy, and subsequently has a huge impact also on the decision-making at the very top. So again, please do the reading and answer the prompts of how the Iranians and how the Americans have approached that subject. Now, again, the big timeline is, going back to 2003, 2005, but then comes 2015, the Iran nuclear deal. Now, the Iran nuclear deal was a huge deal, quite literally, because for the first time, not only did the Americans and the Iranians sit down and talk to one another under the Obama administration, the Americans, of course, did that from a position of strength because sanctions were still in place. But for the first time after that deal, the Iranians were testing the Americans and the Americans were testing the Iranians. What this means is that both countries will honor their own obligations to reduce tensions, to unfreeze assets, unfreeze certain sanctions, but then also the Iranians honored by stopping enrichment. So this was testing each other. That had never happened before. Before, the Iranians were engaging in megaphone diplomacy, telling how much they hate the Americans, and vice versa. The Americans always considered Iran as their favorite enemy and continue with sanctions regardless. So the Iran deal in 2015 is a big deal, literally a big deal, because for the first time, both countries were testing each other's intentions as well as obligations, whether they would honor these commitments. Now again, and the last reference point for you is, why is enrichment such a big deal? So I mentioned the whole essence of non-proliferation is we don't want additional countries having a nuclear weapon. But what's enrichment? So enrichment of uranium is necessary, for nuclear energy. But if you enrich uranium enough, at certain percentage point, you will have weapon-grade uranium. Now, if you have weapon-grade uranium, and if you have the missile capabilities, so you have plenty of, long-range ballistic missiles, you can mold that into, a nuclear, bomb device, put in the missile, and you have a nuclear weapon. And now all of that is a very sophisticated, a very lengthy process, very technically demanding process. And part of the Iran deal was that so-called window of opportunity was expanded for the Iranians. Now, for the Iranians to do that would take a very, very long time because they handed over a lot of their stockpile of enriched uranium. In exchange, they were getting ready-made, if you like, uranium from the international market. So that is important, that window of opportunity. That window of opportunity means you have enriched uranium and you have the missiles, and you can put those two together and you have a nuclear weapon. That window, that breakout potential had been expanded substantially after the Iran nuclear deal, because Iran had given up so much and had really opened up its entire program to outside inspections. So again, please engage in the reading, reflect on the prompts, and be sure that you reference the reading, that and other reading if you like, in your answer in Canvas.